Alex had always been known for one thing: his skill as a saboteur. In a galaxy torn by war, where everyone had their own agenda, Alex was the kind of man you would call when you needed something done. But there was one problem: Alex was trusted by almost no one. His trust rating, a mere 0.1%, was proof of his reputation. Once, he had been part of a powerful military faction, working with elite soldiers on secret missions. But that life had ended in betrayal. Alex had walked away from it all, his hands stained with the consequences of his actions. He had sabotaged his own team, sold secrets to the highest bidder, and earned the wrath of many powerful enemies. No one wanted to work with him, and Alex didn't care. He preferred working alone anyway. He had learned the hard way that loyalty was a fragile thing, and it always ended in disappointment. Trust was something he could not afford. It made you weak. It made you vulnerable. It was better to have no one around, to rely only on yourself. That was how Alex survived. He spent his days on the run, drifting from one job to the next, never staying in one place for too long. The money was good, but it wasn't the reason Alex did what he did. It was the thrill, the adrenaline rush of pulling off the impossible, a sense of power that came with outsmarting everyone around him. Alex was a master at sabotage. He could infiltrate any facility, disable any security system, and leave no trace behind. His hands worked quickly, his mind even faster. He had taken down entire fleets, destroyed supply lines, and crippled military operations, all without leaving a single clue. He was the best, but nobody ever knew his name. He was just a shadow, a ghost in the galaxy's vast and chaotic war. One day, Alex was contacted by a faction he had worked with before. They needed his help. It was a job that promised more money than he had ever seen before. But this time, something felt different. The job wasn't just another routine mission. This time, he would have to deal with a force he had never encountered. Before, the message was simple: sabotage the enemy's supply chain, disable their weapons, leave no trace. Alex didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He knew how it worked. His employers were always vague, never revealing the full details of the job. It didn't matter. As long as the payment was good, Alex didn't care about the why. He would do what he did best: destroy, dismantle, and disappear. He arrived at the enemy's stronghold under the cover of darkness, his stealth ship gliding silently through the void. The enemy had no idea he was coming. Alex had studied their systems for weeks, learned their weaknesses, and mapped every security loophole. He was ready. The mission started as expected. He bypassed the security measures with ease, moving through the darkened corridors of the enemy's base like a shadow. The guards were no match for him. Quick distraction here, a well-placed explosive there, and the entire perimeter was in disarray. But as Alex moved deeper into the heart of the base, he began to notice something strange. The facility was unlike any he had ever seen before. The walls were lined with technology that seemed far more advanced than anything he had encountered. It wasn't just a weapons base, it was something much bigger. Curiosity began to creep in, but Alex quickly shoved it aside. He wasn't here to investigate. He was here to do his job and leave. Still, there was something about this place that felt wrong, like it wasn't supposed to be here. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if something was lurking just beyond his vision. He reached the main control room, the heart of the facility. It was time to plant the explosive device and move on. But as he prepared to set the charges, he noticed a strange console at the center of the room. It wasn't like the others. This one was different-alien almost. His fingers hovered over the buttons. He knew it was a risk to tamper with it, but something pulled him in. He pressed a few keys, just to see what would happen. The console hummed to life, and a series of symbols flashed across the screen. They were like nothing he had ever seen before. Before he could stop himself, the system locked him out. The console blinked, and then an alarm sounded. Lights flashed, and the walls began to shake. Alex cursed under his breath. He had triggered something. Something he wasn't supposed to. The ground beneath him cracked open, revealing a massive chamber hidden deep beneath the base. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. In the center of the chamber stood a massive machine. power cork glowing ominously. It was then that Alex realized the truth. He hadn't just sabotaged a weapons facility, he had stumbled upon something far worse. The machine wasn't just for destruction. It was something far more dangerous, something that could destroy entire worlds. Panic surged through him, but Alex kept his cool. He had to leave now. He knew the mission was over, but he couldn't just walk away. The device had to be destroyed. Before it could do any more damage, Alex had no choice but to disarm it himself. The clock was ticking, and the enemy would soon be on their way. As he made his way to the core, Alex knew that this wasn't just another job. This was bigger than anything he had ever faced. And for the first time in a long while, Alex felt fear creeping up his spine. He wasn't sure if he could stop this machine, but one thing was certain: he was the only one who could. Alex didn't have much time. The alarms were still blaring, and the walls shook with the pressure of something big. He had disarmed many bombs in his life, but this was different. He was no longer just dealing with a simple explosive. The machine in the chamber was like nothing he had ever seen before. It wasn't a weapon, it was something much more dangerous. And Alex knew it. His instincts kicked in, but they weren't enough. He needed to think, and he needed to think fast. The flashing lights and the deafening alarms didn't help. Alex felt his heart race as he sprinted toward the machine's core. Every step was a gamble. If the enemy was on their way, this whole place would soon be swarming with soldiers. There was no time to waste. He reached the core, where the pulsating energy seemed to call to him. The machine was humming louder now, its power growing with every passing second. He could feel the heat radiating from it. The floor beneath him vibrated, almost as if the entire base was alive. Alex's hands shook as he examined the core's complex interface. It was a puzzle, but he was a saboteur. Puzzles were his specialty. He had taken down entire military bases and weapon systems with nothing more than his wits and his knowledge of technology. This, however, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He had no idea what kind of technology powered this thing, but he knew one thing: if it was left unchecked, it could destroy entire planets. There was a small terminal next to the core. Alex's fingers flew over the keys, trying to unlock it. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he worked. The screen flickered, and for a moment he thought he had broken through. But then the terminal flashed red and locked him out again. He cursed. Under his breath, the system was designed to prevent unauthorized access, and Alex wasn't authorized. It wasn't just a simple machine, it was a weapon. It knew who was allowed to tamper with it and who wasn't. He needed a way around it, but he had no idea how to break through the system's defenses. The countdown continued, and the room seemed to grow hotter with each passing second. His mind raced. He had learned a lot in his years of sabotage, but sometimes he didn't have all the answers. Sometimes it was all about making things up. As you went along, Alex glanced around the chamber. There had to be another way. As his eyes scanned the room, he noticed something: a small, almost hidden control panel on the far side of the chamber. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The panel looked like it had been installed hastily, almost as if someone had forgotten about it or had no time to finish the job. It was a weak spot. Without thinking, Alex bolted for the panel. He reached it just as the countdown reached its final seconds. His hands moved quickly, and before he knew it, he had pulled open the panel. The wires inside were tangled and chaotic, but Alex didn't hesitate. He grabbed the nearest wire and yanked it free, expecting sparks or an explosion. Instead, it was only silence. The machine stopped humming. For a brief moment, Alex thought he had failed. But then the countdown disappeared from the screen, and the alarm stopped. The room fell quiet, and for the first time since entering the base, Alex allowed himself to breathe. He had done it. He had stopped the machine. But as he stood there, sweat pouring down his face, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was too easy. There had to be more to this machine than he realized. It only disabled the core, but he didn't know what else it could do. What if it was just the beginning? Just as he started to consider the possibility that his job wasn't finished, a loud crash echoed from behind him. Alex spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon, but it was too late. The doors to the chamber burst open, and armed soldiers stormed in, their guns aimed at him. Freeze. one of them shouted. The soldiers had the look of men who had been through countless battles, and their eyes showed no mercy. Alex didn't move. He knew there was no point. Element of surprise was gone, and even if he could fight his way out, it wouldn't make a difference. It already disrupted something far bigger than him. It was only a matter of time before the enemies. Leaders found out what he had done. The soldiers closed in on him, their weapons never wavering. Alex raised his hands slowly, signaling that he wouldn't fight. The last thing he needed was to give them a reason to shoot him on sight. He had a better plan, one that didn't involve running or fighting. One of the soldiers stepped forward, his face hidden behind a helmet. "Who are you?" the man asked. "What have you done to the machine?" Alex didn't answer right away. He needed to buy himself some time to figure out his next move. He didn't know what was going to happen next, but he had to play his cards carefully. He had already done the damage. The rest was just a matter of survival. "I'm just here to do a job," Alex said, his voice steady. "You'd be wise to let me go." The soldier didn't answer. Instead, he gestured to the others. Alex was quickly surrounded. As the soldiers moved in, he realized just how deep this went. The machine wasn't just a weapon, it was part of something much bigger. Something dangerous. And Alex, the man with a 0.1% trust rating, might be the only one who could stop it. Alex's hands were bound, and his back was pressed against the cold metal wall. The soldiers had taken him deep into the enemy's base, far from the chamber where he had disabled the machine. Now, locked in a small, dimly lit cell, he had nothing to do but wait. He didn't fear death. He never had. The risk of dying had been a part of his life for as long as he could remember. But this was different. Alex could still hear the hum of the machine in his mind, its power swirling in the air. He had barely been able to stop it. What would happen when the enemy fixed whatever he had broken? What if it wasn't just one weapon, but an entire army, ready to destroy? Alex knew the answer. Couldn't let them have it. But how would he get out? How would he stop it before the entire galaxy fell to pieces? He had no plan. He only had instincts. After what felt like hours, the door to his cell creaked open, and a guard stepped inside. Alex's eyes adjusted to the dim light as he looked up at the soldier. The man was tall, wearing a dark uniform with patches that marked him as an officer. He carried a weapon. But there was something in his eyes, something that told Alex he wasn't like the others. "You're awake," the officer said, his voice cold. "We have questions." Alex didn't respond. He didn't trust this man, or anyone for that matter. But he couldn't afford to remain silent either. Time was running out, and he had to find a way to turn this situation to his advantage. The officer stepped closer, but Alex didn't flinch. The man's eyes narrowed. "You think you've stopped it, don't you? You think you've disabled the machine?" Alex said nothing. His silence was the only thing he had left. The officer continued. "You're wrong. That machine is just the beginning. It's not just a weapon, it's a signal. When it goes online, every military faction in the galaxy will be forced to bow to the one who controls it." Alex's mind raced. A signal. That was why the machine had seemed so different. It wasn't just built to destroy, it was built to control. It disabled it temporarily, but there was more to the puzzle, much more. The officer leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You may have been a saboteur, but you're the only one who can stop it now. If you help us, you'll have everything you've ever wanted. Power, respect, freedom, you name it." Alex's jaw clenched. He had heard promises like this before. Power, respect, freedom. They were words designed to manipulate. It wasn't interested. But the truth was, the officer had a point. He was the only one who knew how to disable the machine. He was the only one who could stop the signal from spreading. "I don't work for anyone," Alex said, his voice low and steady. "I do things my way." The officer smirked, clearly not surprised. "We're not asking for loyalty. We're asking for help. The choice is yours. We either work together, or you die here and now." Alex studied the officer's face, searching. For any hint of weakness, there was none. The man was serious, and so was the threat. Alex didn't want to die here. Not now. Not when there was still a chance to stop the chaos he had accidentally set in motion. "I'll help you," Alex said finally, his voice calm. "But I'm doing it my way." The officer raised an eyebrow. "And what's that supposed to mean?" Alex stood up slowly, his body aching from being confined for so long. His hands were still bound, but it didn't matter. He had no intention of following anyone's orders. He had his own plan. "I'm going to destroy the machine. No one controls it," Alex said, his eyes locking with the officer's. "Not you, not anyone." The officer looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'm not going to stop you, but I can give you the tools to make sure you don't fail." For the first time in a long while, Alex felt something shift inside him. Maybe it was the officer's honesty, or maybe it was the fact that Alex had a chance to do something bigger than himself. Whatever it was, it ignited something in him. He wasn't just a saboteur anymore. He was the key to saving or destroying the galaxy. The officer untied Alex's hands, and Alex flexed his wrists, the blood rushing back into his fingers. He glanced at the officer. "What's the plan?" he asked. The officer led him out of the cell and down a long hallway, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They reached a small room where several armed soldiers were waiting, along with a few scientists who appeared to be working on the machine. It was clear that the operation was bigger than Alex had originally thought. "This is where you come in," the officer said, gesturing toward a screen. "We've been tracking the signal, spreading faster than we can contain it." Alex watched the screen as a map of the galaxy appeared. Red dots blinked rapidly, showing the expanding reach of the signal. The officer's voice was grim as he continued. "If we don't stop it soon, it will be too late. The machine can control entire fleets. It can force governments to submit. We need you to disable the core, or everything we've worked for will be lost." Alex turned away from the screen and looked at the officer. "And what do you want in return?" The officer didn't hesitate. "I want the galaxy to remain free. I want the machine destroyed. That's all." Alex studied him for a moment. He wasn't sure if the officer was telling the truth, but right now, Alex didn't have many options. He had to take the risk. "Then let's finish this," Alex said, his voice filled with determination, as the team began to prepare for the mission. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. For better or worse, he was no longer just a saboteur. He was a hero, whether he liked it or not. Alex had always been good at getting in and out of places, but this was different. It wasn't just a simple mission to sabotage a supply chain or disable a weapon. This time, he was going after something far more dangerous, something that could control the entire galaxy. He stood in a small room, surrounded by the officers, soldiers, and scientists who had been assigned to help him. There was a feeling of unease in the air. No one seemed to trust anyone else. It was obvious. They were all in it for their own reasons, but Alex wasn't worried about that. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to stop the machine. "We don't have much time," the officer said, snapping Alex out of his thoughts. "The machine's core is heavily guarded. If we don't reach it soon, the signal will spread too far. Once it takes over, enough systems, it'll be too late. The galaxy will be under its control." Alex nodded, his mind already working. He had already seen the layout of the enemy base. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was possible. The real challenge, however, wasn't getting to the core, it was stopping it. "Let's move," Alex said, his voice steady. He didn't need any more explanations. He had seen enough to understand what needed to be done. The team moved out, creeping down the narrow hallways of the enemy's base. Every corner they turned, every door they passed, Alex's senses were on high alert. His eyes scanned the surroundings, looking for any signs of danger, any traps or ambushes that could be waiting for them. They reached the main security checkpoint, where a pair of guards stood watch. The soldiers on Alex's team hesitated, but Alex didn't waste any time. He moved quickly, silently, and within seconds, the guards were on the ground, unconscious. "Nice work," the officer whispered as Alex straightened up, wiping his hands on his pants. Alex didn't respond. His mind was already focused on the next obstacle. The closer they got to the core, the more dangerous it would become. The enemy would be expecting them, and they would be ready. They continued through the base, past more security checkpoints, taking out guards and disabling cameras along the way. It was easy enough for Alex, who had done it countless times before. But as they approached the final security barrier, something changed. The walls began to hum, and a faint vibration filled the air. The temperature rose, and Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't the only one who noticed it. The rest of the team looked around nervously. "What's happening?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice shaky. The officer stepped forward, his face tight with concern. "The system is going into lockdown," he said. "We don't have much time. The machine is close." Alex's heart raced, yet a sinking, feeling that they were too late. The enemy was already aware of their presence. The lockdown wasn't just a precaution, it was a trap. "Move quickly," Alex ordered, his voice sharp. The team picked up the pace, rushing toward the final door. That led to the core. But just as they reached it, alarms blared, and the door slammed shut. The team skidded to a halt, their weapons raised, eyes darting for an escape. A loud voice echoed over the intercom. "Intruders detected. Security breach in Sector 5. Prepare for immediate containment." The doors to the core room were sealed tight, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't get through. Alex cursed under his breath. The team had no backup plan. They hadn't anticipated this. "We need another way in," Alex said, scanning the walls for any alternative. He wasn't about to let the mission fail because of a locked door. The officer stepped up to him, a grim look on his face. "We don't have time for another plan. If we don't stop it now, everything's lost." Alex turned to face the officer. "Then we'll have to make our own way in." He moved to the side of the room, searching for anything that could help. His fingers ran over the smooth walls until he found a small vent cover, barely noticeable in the dim light. "It was the only option here," Alex said, pointing to the vent. "We'll go through here." The officer frowned. "It's a tight fit, are you sure?" Alex didn't hesitate. He had crawled through tight spaces like this before. The only difference now was the stakes. He's about to make his way inside. A high-security facility with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. The team reluctantly followed Alex's lead, each soldier squeezing through the narrow vent one by one. The air inside was thick, and the smell of old metal filled their noses. It was slow going, but eventually they reached the end of the vent. Alex was the first to crawl out, followed closely by the officer and the rest of the team. They found themselves in a small, dimly lit room. The core was just beyond a large set of glass windows. Alex could see the machine, still humming and glowing with dangerous energy. He turned to the officer. "Now what?" "We take it down," the officer, he said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't wait any longer. It's time to destroy it." Alex nodded, pulling out his tools. The team moved into position, and Alex began working on the system. He was close to stopping the machine. But he knew that getting in was only half the battle. The real challenge was disarming it without triggering a chain reaction. His fingers flew over the console as he bypassed security protocols and disarmed the failsafes. Every second felt like an eternity, but Alex kept his focus. He had done this countless times, and he wasn't about to fail now. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the console beeped. The machine powered down. For the first time since the mission began, Alex allowed himself a breath of relief. The machine was off. But something didn't feel right. Alex stared at the screen. The machine was powering down, its hum fading into silence. His hand shook slightly, but he didn't let the fear creep in. He had done it. The core was disabled. The countdown had stopped. The galaxy had been saved, at least for now. But something wasn't right. Alex stood up slowly, glancing around at the rest of the team. They looked relieved, but there was a tension in the air that none of them could shake. Something had changed, and Alex could feel it deep. In his gut, the officer stepped forward, his face still grim. "You did it. You actually did it." But before Alex could reply, a loud bang echoed through the room, followed by the sound of metal twisting. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the lights flickered. The team drew their weapons instinctively, their eyes darting to the walls, to the ceiling. "What's happening?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice filled with panic. Alex's eyes narrowed as he scanned the control panel. Didn't need to look long. The data stream was flashing red. There was another signal. The machine had only been part of a much larger system. This was just the beginning. I think we've been played, Alex muttered under his breath. The real threat wasn't the machine. It was what it was connected to. The officer's face darkened. No time for explanations. We need to move. Now. Alex turned to the team, his mind working quickly. We're not safe yet. Get to the backup station. There's a failsafe there. I'll keep the enemy distracted. The officer hesitated for a moment before nodding. Are you sure you can handle this? I don't have a choice, Alex replied, his voice calm but steady. I'll stop them, one way or another. As the team rushed to the backup station, Alex remained behind, his hand on the weapon at his side. He didn't know what he was about to face, but he would be ready. The walls shook again, and this time the alarms didn't stop. The enemy was coming. Minutes passed, but to Alex, it felt like hours. The tension was suffocating, the air thick with anticipation. Then, just as he was beginning to wonder if they were too late, the doors to the control room burst open. The enemy was here. Alex spun around, his weapon raised, ready for a fight. A group of soldiers flooded into the room, their guns aimed directly at him. But it wasn't just any group. They were different special forces, highly trained, and they had been waiting for this moment. One of the soldiers, a tall, imposing figure, stepped forward. His helmet was off, revealing a scarred face. In cold, calculating eyes, he looked at Alex with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. You really thought you could stop it? The soldier sneered. The machine was never the real weapon. It was the key to unlocking something much worse. And now, you're too late. Alex didn't flinch. His heart raced, but he kept his focus. This was the moment he had been preparing for. There was no turning back now. I'm not done yet, Alex said quietly, his grip tightening on the weapon. The soldier's lips curled into a smile. You think you can stop us? You think you're the hero here? You're nothing but a tool, a pawn in a game you don't understand. Before Alex could react, the soldier signaled to his team. The room exploded into chaos. Bullets whizzed past him as Alex dove behind a metal pillar, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. His mind was working at full speed. He knew he couldn't fight them all head-on. He needed a plan. He needed to outsmart them. Using his saboteur instincts, Alex moved quickly, silently. He picked up a piece of debris and threw it across the room, creating a distraction. The enemy soldiers turned toward the noise, giving Alex the opening he needed. He fired his weapon, taking out one of the soldiers in a single shot. The others reacted quickly, but Alex was already on the move, ducking behind cover and firing. With precision, each shot counted. He wasn't going to waste a single bullet. The fight continued for what seemed like hours, but Alex's focus never wavered. He knew that he wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore. He was fighting for something much bigger. The fate of the galaxy was at stake, and he couldn't let these men stand in his way. The officer's voice crackled through his comm device. Alex, we're at the failsafe. System is coming online, but we need your help. The main control room is locked down, and we can't access the override. Alex's mind raced. The officer was right. The system was about to go live, and if they didn't stop it now, it would be too late. But the soldiers in the room weren't backing down. They had the upper hand. He needed to end this fight fast. With a deep breath, Alex made a decision. He sprinted toward the soldiers, using the last of his energy to take them down one by one. The battle was brutal, but Alex fought with everything he had. His movements were calculated, his attacks swift and deadly. It wasn't about strength, it was about speed and precision. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last soldier fell. Alex stood over him, panting, his body covered in sweat and blood. The room fell silent, and Alex could hear the sound of his own breathing as he wiped the blood from his brow. He pulled out his comm device, his fingers shaking slightly. Officer, I'm done. The way is clear. Get to the core and shut it down. There was a brief pause before the officer's voice came through, breathless but relieved. Good work, Alex. We're on our way. Alex leaned against the wall, exhausted. He had done it. He had stopped the enemy, and now there was only one thing left to do: make sure the machine was completely disabled. It wasn't over yet. But the worst was behind him. As the officer and his team made their way to the core, Alex looked around the room. It had been a long, difficult fight, but he had finally earned their respect. He had gone from the most mistrusted saboteur to the man who saved the galaxy. But Alex knew this wasn't the end. It never was. There would always be more battles to fight, more enemies to face. But for now, he had done what needed to be done, and that was enough. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hall as Alex leaned against the wall, his body aching from the battle. His chest rose and fell with each breath, but his mind was sharp. Despite the chaos and the fight, there was a sense of clarity that he hadn't felt in a long time. The battle wasn't just for survival, it was for something bigger than himself. It was for the galaxy. The officer's voice crackled through his comm. "Alex, we've reached the control room. The override is in place. System is shutting down. You did it. We did it." Alex didn't answer right away. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the exhaustion wash over him. The adrenaline that had kept him moving for so long was starting to fade, leaving behind a deep aching. Tiredness. He had done it. The machine was disabled. The enemy had been defeated. But more than that, he had done it by working with others. He had trusted again, and for the first time, it had worked. Alex pushed himself off the wall and walked toward the exit. His mind was still racing, but his movements were slow, deliberate. The hallway was quiet now, the alarms silenced. Chaos of the battle was over, but the weight of what had just happened hung heavily in the air. The machine was no longer a threat, but the fight had changed something inside Alex. As he entered the control room, the officer stood by the console, a smile of relief on his face. The rest of the team was gathered around, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. They had done it together. "We couldn't have done it without you, Alex," the officer said, his voice sincere. "You saved us all." Lex looked at the team. Each member who had followed him into danger, each one who had trusted him despite his past. He didn't respond right away. Words felt like they weren't enough. He'd been the outsider for so long, the one no one trusted. But now in this moment, he felt different. He felt like part of something bigger. "I did my part," Alex finally said, his voice calm. "But we all did. We all stepped up when it mattered." The officer nodded, understanding. "You're a hero, Alex. I know you've never wanted that title, but you are one." Alex shook his head. "I'm no hero. I'm just a man who knows how to get things done." The officer smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's all a hero really is." The rest of the team began to gather their things, preparing to leave the base. They had completed their mission, but the journey wasn't over yet. There was still much to do: rebuilding, reestablishing order, making sure the galaxy stayed safe. The battle against the enemy was won, but the war was far from over. Alex stood by the door, watching as the team prepared to leave. He had been a saboteur, a man who worked alone. He had trusted no one, relied on no one. But now, for the first time in years, he realized that he wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't just a tool to be used. He had found something worth fighting for. The officer approached him, his voice quieter now. "You've earned your place here, Alex. If you ever want to join us again, we'll be waiting." Alex didn't answer right away. He thought about the officer's words, about what it meant to belong, to be part of something that wasn't just about survival. For so long he had pushed people away, convinced that it was better to be alone. But maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong. "Thanks," Alex said simply, his voice soft. "But I have a different path to walk now." The officer didn't push him. He simply nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. "Whatever path you choose, Alex, you'll always have a place with us." As the team began to leave the control room, Alex turned and looked back at the machine, now deactivated and powerless. He had done what he set out to do. He had stopped the machine, saved the galaxy, and earned the trust of people who had once seen him as a threat. But there was more to life than just fighting and surviving. He had found something he hadn't expected: a sense of purpose, a chance to make a difference, and the possibility of something more. Alex walked to the exit. Stepping out into the hallway and into the unknown, He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he was ready to face it. He wasn't the same man he had been when he started this mission. He had changed. And maybe, just maybe, that change would lead him to a new kind of life. He stepped out into the light, the door closing behind him. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but Alex knew that with each step, he was no longer walking alone. As the door closed behind him, Alex looked toward the horizon. The stars above seemed endless, stretching out into the unknown. The galaxy was full of possibilities, and Alex was ready to face whatever came next. He had been a saboteur, a man with a 0.1% trust rating, but now he was more than that. A man who had earned his place in a galaxy that had once turned its back on him. The future was uncertain. But for the first time, Alex was ready to take it on. He had stopped a machine that could have destroyed everything, and in doing so, he had found something worth fighting for. He wasn't a hero in the way most people thought of heroes, but he had saved the galaxy, and in that he had found his redemption.